Dave Clawson is one of the most respected college football coaches in the nation. So a 4-8 bump in the road, considering the challenges that he faces at Wake Forest, would be, of course, understandable by all of us, right? Well, Dave Clawson says, no, we're going to do better. We're going to revamp things. We're going to take a look. And we've got Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football to shake out this most recent National Signing Day there at Winston-Salem. Tony, how you doing today?
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I am doing just fine. Appreciate you stopping by to break things down for us. And as you let me know before we started to record, that was the response by one Dave Clawson, not standing on his laurels, but saying, hey, things should be better here. It was 4-8, and that's who we are right now, and we need to change.
Yeah, look, that's true. After making the postseason bowl games for 7 years in a row, Wake Forest obviously didn't this year. That loss at Syracuse on Thanksgiving weekend knocked them out of the bowl picture, and they finished the regular season 4-8. It would be easy, I think, for a lot of coaches to say, hey, we had 7 straight bowl games and we're going to get back there. You know, we just need to work and we need to do some other things. And Clawson had he met with the media, and he clearly was on the road based on the backdrop behind him. He was clearly in a hotel recruiting somewhere, location unannounced. But he was very clear that he said, we were 4-8. And right now I'm a 4-8 coach. My two coordinators are 4-8 coordinators. Our team is a 4-8 team. There's no running from that. There has to be changes. There has to be some accountability, as you put it. He had a good recruiting class. Look, this is Wake Forest. The admissions are brutal to get in. You're not going to get a top 10 recruiting class out of Wake Forest football ever. I think they were 50th in the 247 Sports Composite, which is what we use at Last Word on Sports. That is tied for the highest ranked class in Clawson's 11 years of recruiting for Wake Forest, tied with the 2015 class, I believe it was. So, look, overall, by Wake Forest standards, it was a good class. There's some interesting dynamics in that Wake Forest lost one of the 2 starting quarterbacks it had last year. Mitch Griffiths is gone. He was the starter at the beginning of the season, and this is part of the change that comes about with what Dave Clawson is talking about. You lose Sam Hartman to the transfer portal last year to Notre Dame. Clawson proclaimed Mitch Griffiths as the starter going into spring camp. Griffiths was going into his 4th year as a backup there, and there was no quarterback competition. And Griffiths had a horrible year. He was yanked at the Virginia Tech game for Michael Kern. He would have been out the rest of the season, except Kern got hurt in that game. So he went to backup number 3, and then he went back to Griffiths, and then at the end of the season, he was back to Kern. The quarterback play wasn't good. Kern was all right, Santino Marucci, and Griffiths was bad. So he's got a new quarterback coming in. He's actually got a couple. Got one in the high school recruiting class in Jeremy Heklinski, who was one of the highest rated quarterbacks out of the state of Georgia, 3-star quarterback. Heklinski actually committed last December and has stayed steadfast with Wake Forest even through the ups and downs. Look, you and I have been doing this for a long time. The kid maybe says, hey, there's a great opportunity because their quarterback play wasn't very good. But Clawson said in his conversations with Heklinski over the last 12 months, the kid kind of really even fended off offers from other schools, just saying, don't waste your time. I'm committed. I don't need these other visits. I don't need to go to these other places. I'm going to Wake Forest. So he's got that. The other quarterback that he's bringing in is a veteran out of the transfer portal, Hank Bachmeier. Bachmeier, many people are going to remember him from his years at Boise State. He spent last year at Louisiana Tech. He is a 63% career passer. He's got a kind of questionable touchdown to interception ratio, because if you watched him even at Boise State, he's got a little bit of gunslinger in him. He's not afraid to throw into tight places where maybe at best that he not, but that's just who he is. What makes this interesting is Clausen has used the transfer portal a couple of times before, usually with grad transfers, because they have an easier time getting into Wake Forest, quite frankly. Just real quickly, so that people have some context to go with this. In order to graduate with a degree from Wake Forest, 60% of your class credits must be from Wake Forest. That means if you're going to come in as a sophomore or a junior, most of your credits from your previous school are going to get thrown out the window. And because you're not going to have enough to graduate from Wake Forest. So in Clausen's world, you need a guy who hasn't been at his previous school more than a year, or you need a grad transfer, someone who's already graduated, that got accepted into grad school at Wake Forest. And that's where Bachmeier comes in. And it was interesting because Clausen told us that it was purposeful to go get a guy who only had 1 year of eligibility left, because he didn't want a rental player, my words, not Clausen's, sitting in there for 2 years or 3 years while he's got some young up-and-coming quarterbacks like Hecklinski, like Charlie Gilliam, the redshirt freshman who's there. He wants to be able to still develop those guys while bringing in a veteran who knows how to play. Now, also, if you've ever seen Bachmeier play, you don't really see him fitting into Clausen's slow mesh offense, which then, if you read between the lines, there's going to be some changes in the offense. There's going to have to be. The biggest change, there's going to be an open quarterback competition in spring camp. Everybody's in. Clausen said the freshmen are going to get first team reps for a while to see how they do. Bachmeier, of course, will. Michael Kern, the relative incumbent, is going to as well. There is going to be an open quarterback competition. And I asked Clausen, you've talked about that in terms of the quarterbacks. How does that apply to other positions? And he made it clear, basically, that every position is open. All of them. There's going to be competition at every one of them. Now, you don't really expect freshman offensive linemen to come in and be physically ready to play Power 5, FBS, ACC football. So that's not real likely. Probably the same on the defensive line. But the skill positions, they've got receivers coming in because they lost a couple. They lost Jamal Banks. They lost Keyshawn Williams, the slot receiver. They lost running back Justice Ellis into the portal. So they've had some losses. He's ready to open it up. He's ready to say, you know what, the door's open. Everyone's going to get a shot to compete for this. Because, again, we're 4-8, and we can't do that again.
Talking Wake Forest, looking at National Signing Day with Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football. As Tony mentions, 4 transfers, 19 in the freshman class that have signed for a class that ranks about number 58, according to 247 Sports. Some of the other standouts and intriguing players for you in this 24 class?
Yeah, well, there's Jeremiah Melvin, who is a receiver from Fayetteville, North Carolina. Again, one of the higher rated players that Clausen has gotten in the high school class in quite some time. And with him even mentioning the skill positions are the ones that are going to be a little bit more open. We're going to see this kid is tall. He's 6'3", 6'4". I think they have him measured at 6'5", but I think reality is I've seen other sites where he's 6'4". Fine, whatever. But it matches the prototypical receiver that Clausen likes to have, the big physical guy on the outside. It's who he's had in the past with an A.T. Perry, Donovan Green, who missed last season with a torn Achilles and is coming back for a 6th year. Even guys that he's had like Jamal Banks, who has left for the portal. They're the big physical guys. So Jeremiah Melvin really fits that mold. He's got good speed. And you can see him working well with a quarterback who can throw downfield, which really is Bachmeyer, but also is Hecklinski, because I've watched plenty of game film on Hecklinski, and the kid's got a great arm to go downfield. So with really good accuracy. So I think really he's the other one that stands out. The other thing that we have to say, with Clausen being on the road during the meeting with the press yesterday, he's not done portal shopping right now for the upcoming season. He's got a very limited window in order to get these guys into school in time for spring camp, because there's a lengthy process in the transfer process at Wake Forest. It takes quite a bit of time. But if he can find another grad transfer or two, then he's doing all right. Look, Wake Forest had some NIL money for the first time, really, period, at all. No one's going to tell us, especially at a private school, and especially with a collective at a private school, no one's going to tell us how much they had. But we have a reasonable guesstimate. And without throwing dollar figures out there, we'll say the Clausen had double what he had last December. So when he had to have conversations about keeping some of his own players, which he made clear was his first priority, we're going to use NIL money to keep some of the guys we have so that they're not going into the portal and going somewhere else. He didn't have enough to keep everybody he wanted, but he had enough to keep critical guys at critical positions, and then still be able to go shopping in the portal. And based on the fact that he's still out there hunting in the portal, I guess he's got some money left over. I guess, I guess as someone did the balance sheet at the end of the spending period, there may be a little bit of money left over for him to shop a little bit more. So we'll see. But it's you can really sense the different tone and tenor from Clausen after what was undeniably a terrible season, and putting the accountability on himself.
Yes, there you go. Bouncing back from 4-8, or trying to, and this is the first step, of course, 2024. But those steps include the transfer portal these days. So 4 in the door. And of course, we've got a few more weeks of this transfer portal cycle. Then we look ahead to spring practice, when a lot of players have that difficult conversation, figure out where they stand on the depth chart, and then decide to move on. So there's another opportunity there.
That's always the tough one at spring camp, because you've got, I think, like you said, we've got 2 more weeks in this portal window. And there are guys who can still enter if their teams are still in postseason play after January 4th. They have 5 days after their last game to still jump in. But let's be realistic with what Wake Forest can target. Guys who are on a Final Four playoff team are probably outside the money that Dave Clausen has left over from, searching the couch and the coin holder in his car. Those guys are probably out of reach. But then, like you said, you get 2 weeks in the spring also, and we'll see what comes from that.
Tony Siracusa, last word on college football. You've probably taken the deep dive on your own team, possibly your rival. But if you go to Last Word on College Football and you're a college football junkie, that is the place to get caught up across the nation on National Signing Day in the transfer portal.
Tony? Yeah, we had it all. We ran 40 player profiles as they signed on Wednesday, and we continue to run some team analysis as to how teams did overall. And because the early signing period in December, that's become the signing period as opposed to February, the Wednesday in February. So, and just as a throw-in, by the way, if you haven't seen it already, we are running previews on every single bowl game. We've been doing it since the bowl started. We have previews coming day to day today on every single bowl game. So it's a good place to get caught up.
Nice. All right, Tony. Thanks for the breakdown.
All right, Mark. Glad to do it. Be well.